Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. I'm Mia. I'm 29. And for the last 2 weeks, I've been carrying around a secret that's tearing me apart. It's strange how some things build up so quietly you hardly notice the weight until it's too much. Like a slow leak in a tire, you keep driving, thinking it's fine, until suddenly you're stranded on the side of the road, wondering how you missed the signs. That's how this all started. How I got drunk, kissed someone else, and didn't tell my fiancé for 2 whole weeks. And now, it feels like everything I thought was solid is crumbling beneath me. We used to be different. When Jake and I first met, it was like the whole world folded into this one safe, warm space just for us. I could lose myself in his eyes and feel completely seen, desired, wanted. We were a team, laughing late into the night, tangled in sheets, whispering promises we meant to keep. It wasn't just physical. There was a fire in how he touched me, a magnetic pull that made me feel sexy and alive. I'd rest my head on his chest and hear his heartbeat steady and sure, like an anchor in a storm. But things changed. Slowly. Maybe I did, too. At first, it was little things, a kiss that felt rushed, a hug that squeezed more like a question than comfort. One night, we cuddled on the couch, and I felt this invisible wall between us. His hand hovered over mine but didn't quite reach, like he was afraid to close the gap. The warmth was fading, and I didn't know if it was me or him pulling away. I started to notice the silence growing between us. Not the good kind, the comfortable quiet that wraps around you like a blanket. It was cold and heavy, like a weight pressing down on my chest. He'd look at me like I was a stranger, or worse, someone who no longer belonged. I remember one night clearly. We were lying in bed, the moonlight casting soft shadows across his face. I reached out to touch his cheek, hoping for that spark, that reassurance that we were still us. But his eyes drifted away, and when he finally kissed me, it felt like a formality, a duty checked off a list rather than an expression of love. My heart sank, but I said nothing. Because I was scared. Scared that if I said how much I missed him, how lonely I felt, it might push him further away. So I bottled it up, pretending everything was okay, even though inside, I was unraveling. The night I kissed him, or rather, the night I kissed someone else, I was drunk, maybe too drunk. The kind of drunk that dulls your senses just enough to let you do things you wouldn't sober up and admit. It wasn't about love, not really. It was a desperate, aching need to feel something, anything, other than the growing emptiness between us. And for 2 weeks, I didn't tell Jake. I told myself it was a mistake. A moment of weakness. That it didn't mean anything. But every day I felt like another brick in a wall I was building between us. The moment I realized something had changed for good wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting or slamming doors. It was quiet, terrifyingly quiet. I was sitting across from him at the dinner table, the silence so loud it echoed between us. I looked into his eyes, searching for the man who used to hold me like I was the only thing that mattered. Instead, I saw someone I barely recognized. That night, I understood, we weren't just drifting apart. We were on the verge of losing everything. And I didn't know how to stop it. Jake is a firefighter. It's the kind of job that demands bravery, quick decisions, and physical strength. He's used to being the one who saves people, the hero in uniform. But at home, the role feels different, more complicated. I see how exhausted he is after long shifts, how he tries to switch off the chaos, but it doesn't always work. That evening, after he came home from a 24-hour shift, I watched him collapse onto the couch like a man who'd been through a war zone. His hands trembled slightly, and I knew he was carrying more than just smoke and sirens. He reached for me instinctively, pulling me into a tight hug. His arms locked around my waist, but the hold felt more like a lifeline for him than a gesture of love for me. I felt trapped under the weight of his fatigue, like I was supposed to be his anchor, but I was drowning, too. "I'm here," he said quietly, his voice rough from sleep and stress. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel that closeness again, but all I could think about was how hollow it felt. I wasn't sure if I was invisible or if he just didn't see me anymore. "Jake," I tried, pulling back slightly, "I need more than just the hug right now." He frowned, confused, and I could tell he didn't understand. "I need to talk. To connect. Not just this." I gestured between us, frustrated by how words failed me. He rubbed the back of his neck, the way he always does when he's uncertain. "I'm trying. I just don't know how to fix this." I swallowed hard, biting back tears. How could I tell him that I needed to feel safe inside the relationship before I could even think about physical closeness? That the touch I craved wasn't about sex, but about being seen, really seen, for who I was beneath the surface? Instead, I stayed silent, afraid that explaining myself would only widen the gap between us. Later that night, when he reached for me again, this time with more urgency, I hesitated. My body wanted to respond, to let the familiar rhythm of our closeness soothe the ache inside. But my heart was tangled in knots. I pulled away gently, fearing rejection more than anything. "It's not you," I whispered, but I wasn't sure it was true. Jake looked hurt, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Then what is it?" I don't know how to say it." We lay there, tangled but distant, the space between us filled with all the things we weren't saying. The next day, I caught myself watching him from across the kitchen. He was so strong, so steady in his work, but fragile here, at home. I wanted to reach out, to tell him everything, the kiss, the lie, the loneliness, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I smiled and poured us coffee, trying to pretend the cracks in our foundation weren't getting bigger. The misunderstanding between us wasn't just about physical touch. It was about the emotional disconnection that had crept in silently, invisibly, until it felt like a chasm. He showed love through his presence, through tired hugs and protective arms, but I needed more, an emotional lifeline before any of that could feel real again. And neither of us knew how to bridge that gap. Jake reached for me again that night, his hands gentle but firm as he tried to pull me closer. I wanted to melt into his touch like I used to, wanted to feel that spark that made everything else disappear, but instead, I felt a cold disconnect coil inside me. He kissed my forehead softly, whispering, "Hey, I'm here." I closed my eyes and leaned into the touch for a moment, but when his hand slid lower, his fingers brushing the curve of my waist, I flinched. It wasn't that I was afraid of him. I wanted to want it. I did. But all I felt was numbness, a quiet resistance I couldn't explain. He pulled me into a hug, but it was different this time. His hands weren't steady, they trembled slightly, like he was grasping for something slipping through his fingers. I stiffened, shrinking back just enough to leave space between us. "Did I do something wrong?" His voice cracked with vulnerability. "No," I said quickly, hoping to stop the questions before they came. "I'm just tired." But it wasn't the tiredness of exhaustion. It was something deeper, an ache I couldn't name. When he tried to kiss me, I barely registered it. His lips brushed mine, but the warmth I remembered was gone, replaced by a hollow echo that bounced off the walls of my heart. I pulled away slightly, biting my lip to hold back the confusion that was turning into frustration. Jake noticed. "Mia?" "I don't know," I whispered. "I'm sorry." He sighed, resting his forehead against mine. "I miss us." I did, too. But the us I missed was slipping further and further away with every awkward touch and every silent night. Later, he gave me that familiar playful smack on my butt as we walked into the kitchen, a gesture that used to make me laugh, a secret between us. This time, I barely reacted. The smack echoed too loudly in the quiet room, and I felt a pang of sadness wash over me. Why couldn't I just feel something? I kept telling myself I wasn't broken. That this was just a rough patch, a tired season in a long relationship. But the truth was harder to admit. I was pulling away. I wanted to reach for him, to hold him close, but my heart hesitated, like it was afraid to break again. As he kissed me goodnight, I tried to smile, tried to pretend this was just another bad day. But inside, I was screaming. Why does everything have to turn into sex? That question circled in my mind, relentless and raw. Because what I needed wasn't that. I needed him to see me. To really see me, not just the body that used to excite him or the partner who answered his calls at night. I needed the warmth of emotional connection, the kind that made the physical feel like an extension of love, not a replacement. But right now, all I felt was the cold distance between us, growing wider with every touch I couldn't meet halfway. That night, Jake cooked dinner. It was one of those rare evenings when he wasn't exhausted, when the tension between us hadn't yet taken over the room. He set the table with care, lit a candle, and smiled at me like he was trying to bridge the gap we'd been silently building for weeks. "Remember when we used to do this?" he said, handing me a glass of wine. "Just slow down and enjoy each other." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe us was still there, somewhere beneath all the distance and secrets. But as we ate, the silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I picked up my food, my mind racing with the weight of what I hadn't told him. The kiss. The lie. The nights I spent pretending everything was okay. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "I'm so tired, Jake," I blurted out, my voice trembling. "Tired of pretending. Tired of feeling like I'm invisible in my own relationship." He looked up, startled. "What are you talking about?" "I kissed someone else," I said, the words breaking free in a rush. 2 weeks ago. And I didn't tell you. Because I was scared. Scared of losing you." The wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to breathe underwater. "How? Why?" "I don't know," I whispered, tears spilling down my cheeks. "I was drunk. I felt so alone, Jake. So disconnected from you. And I didn't want to ruin everything." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated and confused. "You should have told me. We could have worked through it." "I know," I said, my voice breaking. "But I didn't think you'd understand. Or maybe I didn't want to face how far we'd drifted." His expression hardened, and I saw the hurt flashing behind his eyes, the betrayal, the anger. "This isn't just about a kiss, is it?" he said quietly. "It's about everything falling apart." I nodded, wiping my face with the back of my hand. "I miss us, Jake. I miss feeling safe with you. I miss being me with you." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away, afraid of what would come next. The room felt unbearably heavy. "I don't know if we can fix this," I said, my voice barely audible. He looked down, silent. After he left the kitchen, I sat alone with the mess of broken glass at my feet and the weight of my own guilt crushing me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear. But mostly, I felt ashamed. How could I have betrayed the person I promised forever to? How had I let things get so bad that I needed to seek comfort somewhere else? The shame twisted in my chest, tight and unforgiving. And yet, beneath it all, there was a flicker of something else, hope. Because admitting the truth, finally, was the first step toward healing. Even if I didn't know what that healing would look like yet. Days slipped by like gray shadows, each one heavier than the last. Jake and I moved through the house like strangers sharing space but not time. I missed him in ways I hadn't realized until the silence became deafening. I missed the way his laugh used to fill the room, the warmth of his hand slipping into mine without hesitation. But every attempt I made to reach out was met with a quiet wall, his eyes distant, his voice low, his touch reluctant. One evening, I watched him from the doorway of our bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, the weight of everything pressing down on him. For a moment, I saw the man behind the firefighter uniform, the man who carried scars no one else could see. He's hurting, too. Not because I betrayed him, but because he loved me fiercely and now felt powerless to fix what was broken. That realization softened some of the sharp edges of my guilt, but it didn't erase them. I carried the burden of what I'd done, the secret that had spilled out and left us raw and exposed. I wanted to talk to him, to say the words that might heal us, but the distance between us felt like an ocean I didn't know how to cross. When he did speak, his voice was cautious, guarded. "I don't know how to move past this, Mia." Neither did I. But I couldn't give up, not yet. I loved him. I loved us. So I decided to try. To be patient. To be honest, to be brave enough to face the mess we'd made and the pain we couldn't hide. Because sometimes love isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about choosing to keep showing up, even when it hurts. We tried. Not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with quiet, honest conversations that felt like peeling back layers, sometimes painful, sometimes hopeful. Jake told me about the nights at the firehouse when he thought about giving up, about how scared he was that he'd lose me. I told him about the loneliness that had pushed me towards someone else, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I felt invisible. We set new boundaries, not to cage each other, but to protect the fragile space we were rebuilding. No secrets, no silence. One evening, after a long talk that left us both raw and tired, Jake pulled me into a hug. It was silent, wordless, but everything I needed. His arms around me felt like a promise, not that everything was fixed, but that we were still here, trying. Later, he fell asleep on the couch, and I watched him with a bittersweet ache. The man I loved was still there, but so was the distance between us. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe we'll find our way back to each other, or maybe this is the beginning of letting go. Either way, I'm learning that love isn't perfect. It's messy and complicated, full of mistakes and forgiveness. And sometimes, the hardest thing is knowing when to hold on, and when to finally say goodbye. But tonight, in the quiet of the living room, with Jake asleep beside me and the weight of everything still lingering, I chose to hold on, for now. So here I am. Mia, 29, with a heart that's been broken, stitched back together, and maybe broken a little again. If you had told me 2 months ago that I'd be standing here, confessing to you the mess I made, the lies I told, and the love I almost lost, I wouldn't have believed you. What I learned through all this isn't just about mistakes or betrayal. It's about what it means to really see someone, and to be seen in return. Jake wasn't perfect. Neither was I. But what we both lacked, at times, was the courage to be vulnerable with each other when it mattered most. I thought love was supposed to feel easy, that desire and connection would flow endlessly, like a river. But it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes love is quiet. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's about showing up on days you don't want to, even when the spark has dimmed and the weight feels unbearable. I also realized that desire, real desire, starts in the mind and the heart, not just the body. You can't fake emotional intimacy with physical closeness alone. The touch means nothing if your soul feels distant. For weeks, I was caught between wanting to hold on to what we had and feeling like I was losing myself in the process. I learned that staying in a relationship doesn't mean surrendering who you are. And leaving doesn't mean you failed. Whether Jake and I find our way back to each other or walk separate paths, I know this: I deserve to be loved fully. Seen fully. Without secrets or shadows. And so do you. Love isn't a fairy tale or a perfect story. It's raw, complicated, sometimes heartbreaking. But it's also the most human thing we'll ever do. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: never stop asking for what you need. Don't let silence or fear build walls between you and the people you care about. Because in the end, the greatest heartbreak isn't about what we lose. It's about what we never dared to say out loud. I'm still learning. Still growing. Still hopeful. And maybe that's enough, for now.